Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Bernard Barnes, and I'm the Cloud Partner Manager assigned to Hypori from Intel, and I also have 3 other partners that I support. And I'm here today to talk about our partnership with Hypori from an Intel perspective, along with my counterparts, Fareed El-Chaloui, who is the Principal Solutions Architect from Intel, and then we also have Jim Cushman here, the Chief Product Officer from Hypori, here with us today. For a show of hands here, how many people are familiar or have heard of Hypori? Anyway, just a handful of people, okay? And I guess a couple more questions. How many of you all have any concerns around cybersecurity at all? Okay, excellent. How about from a mobile perspective? Is that a concern? Okay, excellent. Well, hopefully during this presentation, we can address those concerns and also explain the value between Intel as well as AWS through a Hypori and what we have to offer. So in today's agenda, we will talk about our overall partnership between AWS and Intel, and also discovering more about the hardware, software, and service outcomes that Intel and AWS are able to achieve. And also talk about the use case of Hypori through the testimonials that we will share with you, and case studies and things that we have. And also, we're going to share some calls to action for our audience to be able to learn more and hopefully engage the software that has been optimized and accelerated by Intel. And then we'll turn it over to the crowd for some questions and then wrap things up. Does that sound good to everybody? Perfect. All right, so we have had an extensive relationship with AWS at Intel. I've only been in Intel for the last 2.5 years, and I will tell you that they have been the best cloud partner to leverage for all of my ISV partners. And so I took over Hypori about 1.5 years ago and began to look at some of their instances on Intel and realized that there was more to be had. So they have a fantastic offering, but one of the things we want to do is address some of the client concerns that existed around latency and performance. And so as I began to review some of their instances, I started to realize that there was more work that we could do to test them and get them more optimized on the latest and greatest CPU offerings in our Xeon family. And so our former CEO, Pat Gelsinger, talked about accelerating more adoption for our ISV partners along those chipsets, because each generation is going to give you more performance along with more intelligence with our AI offerings, and also improve cybersecurity right out of the gate. So as you sit through this presentation today, you're going to learn more about those features and accelerators that Hypori has leveraged, along with some of the things that Fareed has done with his testing efforts that we would like to share with you today. Okay, and then we also have the Intel Accelerator Program, or IAP, with AWS. And the goal is really to give more investment within those ISV partners that are focused on AWS infrastructure with us, to be able to make them do things faster and more securely, but also sponsor it economically, which is so important. One of my priorities as a partner manager with a program like this is to engage end user clients that are looking to leverage Hypori across many different industry sectors, such as the federal sector, financial, as well as healthcare sectors that have needs around compliance, right? And so compliance is definitely important, but in my understanding of cybersecurity for the last 10 years of work that I've done, if you're proactive in leveraging technology that's been optimized like this on Intel, compliance becomes more of a byproduct of your security approach because of the zero trust principles that exist within Hypori. And so our goal is to be able to tell that story, sponsor it, fund it, and then put it all over the website of Intel and LinkedIn to be able to share the success stories that we've had with our end user clients. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, y'all. I got a little mixed up. So I just went through the IEP program, but we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you. I appreciate it. So this is where the rubber meets the road. And I know that a lot of y'all have questions about the future of Intel, but we were awarded a multi-billion-dollar contract from AWS to be able to produce their chips along with ours domestically, so that way we can avoid things like shortages, right, and delivery delays and things like that due to economic and world events. And so this is just an effort for us to be able to deploy technology domestically and to be able to meet the client needs, so we're not having year-long delays in technology like some of our competitors have, and that we'll be able to also, from a security perspective, ensure that we mitigate the threat landscape by domestic production. So instead of importing from China or some of our other more adversarial partners, I should say, it would be better for us to do things on our own soil, which also leads to more jobs and everybody can win with us. All right, Fareed, this is for you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, can you hear me? Whoa, amazing. Thank you, Bernard. So, as you understood, I'm the techie one. I'm the one who loves tech. And I'm here to talk about mainly technical stuff. I will not put marketing presentations or anything. I'll start with our large and various instances that we have on AWS. We have more than 400 plus Intel instances on AWS. And why is it important? We've heard Matt Garman talk about it. We've heard about choosing the right instance for the right workload, and the amount of savings you can do by doing this thing. So at Intel, as you can see on the graph below, we started with few instances, and you can see that in the last 5 to 6 years, we have accelerated this cadence, and we were able to bring more and more and more instances to AWS. The first thing that I'm going to explain to you is I was a solution architect at Amazon. I'm an ex-AWS myself. And it was hard for me even to understand, once I connect to EC2, what does it mean? All these numbers, all these letters. So I'll take 2 minutes, as this session promises, going back to basics. What do they mean? The first letter is the family. You have R, C, M. So R means memory optimized, C means compute optimized, and way more. So the 7 means the generation. And this is where it becomes really interesting, because the more advanced you are, the better performance you're gonna get. Which means if today you're running on R5i, for example, R5, which is on Intel, and you wanna move to R6, you're winning almost 5 to 6 years of technology advancement. And most people think that they're gonna pay more to get these technologies. Well, it's exactly the opposite. You're gonna pay less. It's less expensive. So by moving to the latest generation, you will save a lot of money. The last one is the capability. The capability means this instance has something special. You probably heard about the D or the Z, which means that it is enhanced performance additional. The D means that you have a local disk. And we didn't stop here. So this year, we worked with AWS so hard to bring this new instance that got released a few days back, which is the Amazon EC2 i7-IE. So the E is for enhanced. And this Intel instances is perfect for databases, for NoSQL databases, for workloads that need access to disk that is fast. It offers up to 40% better compute performance, 65% better real-time storage performance. So let's say you have a NoSQL database that is running, and you want to improve your total cost of ownership on this database. Move to this specific instance. And then you have the U7i. The U7i is already generally available. You can go out and use it. It's based on our 4th generation Intel Xeon scalable processors. And this instance allows you to host huge memory workloads. It could be SAP. It could be, again, NoSQL databases. It can be analytics workloads. So this database is one of the largest present on AWS. But we wanted more. We wanted to go even more. And our customers asked us for it. They wanted a very large instance, especially for SAP HANA, to be exact. And this is why we went and we built this instance with HPE. And this is why you see at the end NH. N is for network optimized and H is for HPE. This is an SAP certified instance that has 32 terabyte of memory. Yes, 32 terabyte of memory. This is a beast. And the best out of them all, this is a virtualized instance. This is not an instance that is a bare metal instance. No, this is a virtualized instance. So you benefit from all the virtualizations that AWS can offer. So we talked about 400 instances, 400 Intel instances. How do we choose? Anyone can tell me, like, how do I choose which instance to use for my workload? We talked about databases, but this could be Python, it could be AI, it could be ML, it could be anything. And this is what we've done with Hypori. We work with them to benchmark and to measure how our CPUs are working. So the first thing that we do is that we work with you, with the AWS customer and partners, to identify what makes sense and what is the most important workload to optimize. And then once we do this, we pass to the second, which is optimize and execute. During this second phase, what we actually do is that we run it against almost all Intel hardware on AWS. Yes, you've heard me right. So we almost go across the 400 Intel instances that are on AWS, and we measure. And the most important thing out of this, this step is that we have data. And this data, we share it with our customers because you're interested to see, for example, the I instance that I have, for example, an SQL server database. Shall I use an R or an I? Like this, I cannot answer it. But once you have tested it and you have measured and you know exactly how it performs, you're able to decide if you want to go with an I or with an R instance. And we optimize. So Intel, we are a very, very large company that contributes to open source code. So we have a lot of optimizations. We do a lot of software. We have a lot of developers, a lot of developers. So these developers work on these workloads to optimize them. And once we have optimized them, we rerun the tests. And once we identify a huge increase in performance, let's say 30, 40, 50, 60%, this is where we say, okay, no, this is amazing. And this is what we're gonna share with everyone here. And we go to the last step, which is the validation and the automation. At Intel, we leave nothing for chance. And if you focus on any Intel slide, whenever we put a number, we make sure that it's extra correct. It goes through various validation. There are 3 different teams that look at these numbers. There are multiple set of experts that look, for example, at the storage level, at the CPU level, at the network level, at the memory level. And they ask us, did you measure this? How much did you improve? And unless we're able to answer these questions, we're not allowed to release anything. But this performance is also based on Intel and years of Intel innovation. When I talk about innovation, I talk about accelerators within our CPU. You've all heard of Intel CPU, correct? Have anyone heard about the accelerators within the Intel CPUs? If you've heard about them, please raise your hand. I see 1, 2 people that knows about this. So whenever you buy an Intel CPU on AWS, you buy them with accelerators. These accelerators will make your workloads run faster. And I have a lot of examples for you today. Today, on AWS, if you take any 7th generation, you will see, for example, the advanced matrix extension. This AMX allows any AI workload, as this is everyone talking about AI, it allows you to get 70%, 80%, sometimes 2 times faster. It depends on the workload, depends on the instance, just by activating it. Activating it sometimes take 1 line of code, 2 lines of code. Sometimes it's already included in the library. But having this line of code, activating your code, this will make you perform way, way better. And we have a lot of AVX 512, for example. Any analytics workload out there can benefit from AVX 512. And the performance increase is mind-blowing. You can get sometimes up to 200 to 300% faster. For example, if you take, we've all worked with pandas, correct? Intel developed something like pandas called modern. Modern, with one line of code, you'll be able to get sometimes 20x performance increase just by switching one line of code. So where did this AMX come from? The AMX did not come from today. It came from way back. So it came from years and years of development and research. And what does it actually do? Why is it important? As you can see on the left side, we're able to do 85 int8 operations just with 2 FMAs. But we wanted more. And as we have seen matrix calculation becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, so we did improve the AVX 512 to create the AVX 512's VNNI. The AVX 512 VNNI makes 256 int8 operations with 2 FMAs. This is available on AWS. The last and the one that we are the most proud about, AMX, which is available on any VM today you take on AWS. Even if you take an M7i large, a C7i large, it has it. The AMX allows you to do 2,048 int8 operations with a single line of instruction. So you'll be able to see that it's more than 10x performance improvement. And it's there on the instances, and you just have to take advantage of it and use it. With this, I thank you, and I'm gonna call Jim to the stage. Thank you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Hey, everybody. Voice coming through okay? Awesome.
Cool. Good job.
So, if I could ask you just a question or two. How many of you work at an organization where your company issues you a cell phone separately from your own? All right. And how many of you work for organizations where they allow you to bring your own phone to work? And do you happen to know whether they also ask you to put some type of software on your phone so they can track what's on your phone and what you're doing and ensure you update your operating system? Yeah, so this is kind of why we are in the space that we're in. And we went back a few slides, didn't we? Not sure why I did that. There we go. So sometimes in life, when you don't like the answers to the questions you're getting, one of the best tactics is to change the question. And many people have been trying to solve this problem today by either making you have a dedicated work phone, which is inconvenient because now you're carrying 2 phones. Not many people like that whole concept. Or they ask you to bring your own phone, but then they put software on your phone that allows them to remotely wipe it if it gets lost or stolen, or when you leave the company, so that none of their IP or data can be compromised. And if there's a data leakage, they might actually even sequester your phone, so they can do forensics on it and do an audit on it, so you lose your own phone. These aren't really desirable outcomes for folks. And so the idea of controlling, managing, and securing the edge device is one that might be a fool's errand to some extent. And so Hypori, one of the things we decided to do is change that question. What if you can't secure and control and manage the edge device? How could you still allow your employees to use it in their work functions? And that's kind of where Hypori is born. It's that unique intersection of managing security and privacy, cost and convenience with a compliant solution. And COVID certainly exacerbated the topic because remote work grew even more. More and more people were away from their desk and the office, and they were working remotely from home. They were mobile, taking their kids to soccer practice and picking them up from school, but still wanted to remain productive. And so Hypori has jumped into that space and said, how do we actually solve that problem and meet all the benefits that folks are looking for? So going to share just a few more slides with you and then talk about the study we actually did in combination with Intel and AWS. And I think you'll appreciate why it makes a lot of sense. So fairly simply, it doesn't have to be BYOD. The company may still want to issue a device. But in the scenarios where you bring your own device to work, we make it possible for you to launch into a virtual work phone. So instead of your phone actually having data on it from work, no data is on your phone at all. No data ever resides on that phone. No data will ever be in transit to or from that device. So there's no chance for a man-in-the-middle attack for data in flight, and there's no issue of somebody cloning or stealing the data from your physical device. It all stays in the cloud. So it really is a wonderful solution around data leakage concerns that you might otherwise have by having all these edge devices introduced into your work environment. You can have multiple accounts. As you see in the illustration, the black to the left, there are two different virtual accounts you can grab. So from a single phone, you might have one that you use for one job and one you might use for another job, if you're a consultant, for an example. Or you might have one for your personal life and one for your work life. And you can have as many of those as you want from a single device. You can also have multiple devices that all access those same virtual workflows. So you can have many to many. And that is on intention and on purpose to give you ultimate flexibility. Once you actually access your virtual workspace in the cloud, which is our primary delivery model, either as a SaaS or a PaaS-based offering, then you're working within the customer's environment. And now it is secure, and the customer is in fact monitoring that as you would expect they would. And what this really offers is a low worry to zero worry concern for IT professionals and security professionals, because they no longer have to worry about data being compromised. So this really just offers you a number of different benefits about the infrastructure that Hypori offers. And as we look at it, maybe it's best to look at just the architecture that we provide. So again, on the left is your physical phone. And on that phone, you'll have an icon that allows you to access your virtual account. So a Hypori icon that you would be on your phone that you would either get from the App Store or the Play Store, because we support both iOS and Android-based devices, to access into your virtual workspace. And again, you can have as many as those as you'd like. These are hosted within an AWS data center. We have regions throughout the world that you can go to. We primarily focus in the US, both East-West as well as GovCloud. And this supports the customer's workers. And everyone would have their own individual virtual workspace with the apps that are delivered. You as an administrator can decide which apps they have access to, or you can give them the ability to download apps much like they would on their own physical phone using the Play Store app. Because again, we're hosting an Android operating system in the cloud that becomes your own phone device. There are various administrator capabilities that dictate the policies of what they can and can't do with these solutions. You can whitelist and blacklist items of what they can do, same way you would normally administer it if you were doing it on their own physical device. Now, this became particularly interesting in our study that we did with Intel and in an AWS environment, testing out their new processor. We are one of the more intense solutions that you can imagine when it comes to using EC2, because if you think about it, what a phone is, it's got 6 to 8 processors in it already with about the same amount of memory. And so that's a fairly intense workload. And if you run that into the cloud, just think about if you have 10,000 employees and they all have devices, you're now talking about 10,000 of these individual things running in the cloud. Now, unless you're my daughter, you're probably not using your phone for much more than 3 or 4 hours a day. I think that's the average study. But in general, you still have all of that processor and memory capability on your phone, just sitting there idle, not doing anything, which makes it a great use case for the cloud because it can expand and elastically when you need to use it and then shut down when you're not. So you're just paying for when you want. Now, your ability to process this very quickly with 2 very high intensity things that we do, which is your boot up time. How do you boot up your phone from being shut off? And then the other is the encoding that we do through our architecture. We encode messages that we've emulated in your virtual workspace, and we stream them down to your physical device where your client resides, so you're just seeing video images of what's playing out in the cloud. So again, this is how no data gets down to your device when you're using it. You're just seeing streaming pixels of what's playing out in the cloud. In order to generate that encoding is also very CPU intensive. So when we did the analysis on the new processing chip, for just a 5% increase in cost, we saw a 25% improvement in our overall performance, which dramatically improved our ability to get greater density and then pass that cost savings on to our customers as well. So for us, it's a fairly intense process to run, let's say 10,000 devices in the cloud. We run on big dot metal machines, big R5 dot metal machines, 96 processor cores, and we run about 22 or 23 of those just to support a 10,000 user environment. So we keep them very, very busy. So that additional 25% performance increase we get, kind of the law of large numbers does enormous things for us. And so just think about it. The world has roughly 7 billion smartphones. If you just took 1% of those, you're talking roughly 420 million or so processor chips across just that 70 million phones. Just 1% of all of the world's phones. You're really talking about well over 400 million processors that are at play across all of those. If you can get a 25% improvement from that, you've talked about going from 425 down to something more like 310. It's an enormous savings. And now what's also very interesting, and I think this is part of the obvious piece of the use case, is how many of those 7 billion smartphones out there in the world today are powered by Intel processor chips? None. Phones are run on ARM processors or run on Apple Silicon. So by moving them into the cloud and running them, we now expose it to Intel processor chips running on x86. Before that, there was really no opportunity to access that market. How much does AWS support all of those mobile phones processing? 0. So again, we're introducing a whole new use case into the cloud for use so that you can see why the union of these relationships were so valuable to offer that, again, to end customers with a secure environment that they now can control and manage. So when we ran this analysis, got that 25% improvement, it was unbelievable for us because now we're saying that is really going to save us a 25% cost really off of our bottom line that we then can pass to customers, more can then pick up, and so it really becomes a virtuous cycle of improvement. So we've really found the partnership to be huge in our use. And one of our biggest use cases is actually in the DoD. So we started where most companies don't, short of maybe a company like Palantir, that you find very few ISVs that start their journey inside of DoD. They generally start in commercial and then eventually try to figure out how to get into the DoD, which is not easy. We did that because that's where the most heightened security challenges are found. You definitely find some of the greatest security concerns just for accessing an environment classified. You have to generally be in a SCIF. And we are the most highly used classified mobile access solution on the globe, being used by various special operators around the globe using our software. We then went to General Army. And if you think about it, the Army has roughly 1 million or so active reservists and guardsmen. You know how many government-issued devices are available amongst that huge user class? About 10%. So of the 10% users that exist out there, they were using a government-issued phone. How would these other people get access to their email? They would have to get in a car and drive 45 minutes just to get to an armory, just to see their email. With Hypori, they can wake up, grab their phone, click a button, and in a couple of seconds, they're in looking at their email from their house. It was just a huge convenience. But in order to achieve that, we had to offer the security to protect all of that confidential or classified information that they wish to interact with on their device. So really an impressive solution for them, and that's why we're now opening it up to other markets like healthcare. We found the defense industrial base, so everybody who supports the DoD, roughly 10 million or so total people who are involved helping support overall DoD, like big SIs and the Boeings, Raytheons, et cetera, of the world. They too are finding a big need for this because they need to interact with the same kind of data from their mobile devices. So it's given us a tremendous capability to deliver to folks who otherwise really had no choice, or they had an enormous inconvenience to access it. And then if you get into healthcare, you run into HIPAA concerns. People were actually sharing information. Certainly during COVID, they're showing PII and PHI information on their personal devices, seeing it by messages. Of course, these were huge HIPAA violations. I think because it was a pandemic, there's a good reason to look the other way. But it's now coming back online. The SEC just fined the largest financial services organizations in the US because people are using WhatsApp to text one another. And so, of course, they're concerned about insider trading or people trying to convince people to buy stuff off book. And so they need the ability to audit all these conversations. So they were fined $1.8 billion because of their use of WhatsApp. So again, more and more of these use cases are starting to pop up to say, well, how can we do this for security and privacy, but now also compliance? They've got big compliance reasons to support. In solutions like MDM, mobile device management, or mobile application management, Intune being one of the more widely known solutions, it doesn't actually meet those compliance standards. Data is still out at the edge. So you still have a security concern. It violates the individual's privacy because now it has access, the company now has access to information about that individual unrelated to work at all. It's basically an agent on the phone for that purpose. So between those two items and the cost of providing somebody a second device, it costs about $1,000 a year to support that. And Hypori is about a third of that cost for a customer. So the CFO loves that solution as well because you can offer all that great convenience value at about a third of the cost of the alternatives. And it makes it super easy to manage. When we were working with the Army, they've had maybe 2 or 3 data breaches where a leak got out. And what would normally happen in the world there is then they would sequester all those phones in, and so the person would lose their phone when that happened. With people who are doing BYOD in the Army with Hypori, we just simply turned off their access, and that's all. Things went amongst a bit. So no sequestering of the phone at all, no violation. So a huge win. And if you work with suppliers who come and go, you know the trouble of getting new contractors onto your systems for use, and then also offboarding them. With us, you can spin them up in a couple of minutes and spin them off in a matter of seconds. So again, another really highly useful use case. As you think about the other industries that we play across between government, healthcare, defense industries, FinServ, et cetera, they share a lot of things in common. And when you talk to a customer, not everybody is focused on the same concerns. Some companies aren't as concerned about security, but they are concerned about their users wanting to adopt the solution. In most companies we end up talking to, probably yours as well, when users actually look at the finer print of the user agreement they're signing up to, they're like, there's no way I'm letting this software on my phone. And so then they demand a second phone from the company, which the CFO dislikes because that's a very expensive model for them to deal with. And then think of all the cost or the work effort associated with fulfillment and insurance and breakage. There's a huge pain to managing that type of a program as well. So it just depends. Security could be a driver, privacy might be a driver, cost, convenience for your users, or compliance are all big drivers for our software. Again, across each of these different industries, and they share it all in common. It is the same solution that we offer to each customer. We don't have like multiple products by industry. And because any app that you can find out on the Play Store basically works within our solution, whether the company built their own bespoke applications or you're just using traditional, say, Office 365 or Google Workspace or Slack or Salesforce or whatever apps you use in your workforce out in the field, they work just like they would on your native phone. They just are being emulated and transmitted down as pixels down to your physical device. So it is the same story as you normally do, which is great because there's no user training required. I mean, if you know how to use a phone, you know how to use Hypori, which makes it great for massive rollouts of users. And you also don't have to worry about, are your end users updating their operating systems in time with the new patches, et cetera, to work with it. If you're building your own applications, you don't have to worry about building and supporting all the different OS versions and patch levels across different models from different manufacturers. You only have to worry about one thing, and that's the OS that we make available on Android out on the cloud. What they do out on the edge is no longer a concern of IT for your group. So you're not forcing them into doing things on their personal device that they'd rather not do. They might want to just wait before they do the upgrade. I know some people, I generally don't take an iOS upgrade right when it's available. I let it run out a little bit because you want to hear what people are saying before you take it. So people have preferences. So it's a very convenient thing to offer for your customers. Let me, as I kind of get closer to the end here, wrap up with a case study with the Air Force. So Air Force did a deal with us this past summer. Air Force is over 100, it's like maybe 250,000 total people between active, Guard, and reservists, and they're all over the globe. they had tried many times to actually come up with a BYOD program, and none of them actually met the security requirements that they had to meet. They had to be compliant with various things like NIST and FIPS. They had to be, and they wanted to run it in the cloud, so it needed to be in an IL5 environment to gain access to what's called NIPRNet. They could not get this program rolling. And so when they tried Hypori, they immediately saw the value. Everyone immediately started coming back and saying, my God, we need to have this deployed everywhere. So we've just started the program this fall, and they're running in our IL5 SaaS environment. For those of you who don't know IL5, it stands for impact level. It's not wildly different than what you probably have heard of, which is FedRAMP. IL5 is the equivalent of FedRAMP High with some additional controls that are in place. And this is just another compliance requirement to operate in the government, and specifically in the DoD in that scenario. They intend to roll it out to 10,000 users initially. They only have 38,000 government-funded devices now, so there's hundreds of thousands of people who are in the Air Force who don't even have access to a mobile experience. They have to go into a desk just to look at email. And again, if you're a reservist or guards and you're only 25-year-old, that's a real pain to have to drive in 45 minutes, wait in line, put your CAT card in the machine, those little green cards, put it in, just to see one email that's inconsequential. That would drive you nuts, right? So it was a great use case for them. They wanted to have a solution where they could use it from anywhere, and we do. We have people who have used it, I think last time I checked, in over 100 different countries, people have been using Hypori and are actually using AWS's Global Accelerator. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's the ability to get it onto dark fiber very quickly and avoid telcos routing through layer 2 and layer 3. So it fast passed them all the way back to where it's hosted in GovCloud, GovCloud West for us, and it gives them an experience that is about as good as physics will allow. I mean, we still deal with light speed limitations about how quick the packets can travel, but it's very quick. So they can operate anywhere on the globe and have access to data that's not allowed to leave sovereign ground in the US. So they can look at it from anywhere. Even if they're on vacation, they can look at information. And so they never feel like they're falling behind or left behind with decisions that are occurring. So it was a great use case for them. And they were kind enough to do a survey for us as they pilot it. And we found that not everybody uses Hypori every day. So it's not necessarily something you need every day, but boy, when you need it, you really do. And so we found probably about 80%, 85% of people were using it at least either daily or several times during a week. And we had some people who used it just as they needed to. And it ranged from people who were at the highest ranking 4-star generals all the way down to the E1s, E2s, at very entry level type positions. We see it up and down, and they all kind of gave us a 92% overall user satisfaction for a mobile solution is kind of unheard of. You're kind of happy if you get to like 65 and they just don't want to throw it against the wall. So that's one of the reasons why they went with the deal. They're all starting to recommit it for. So a combination of using AWS and Intel x86 processing, and now with the improved capability coming with the R7, we see this as just a wonderful partnership and the ability to expand. And I hope next time we see you, we have millions of users that are using this daily, and hopefully you guys can be one of those. So with that, I'll hand it over to Bernard to kind of wrap us up.
All right. So thank you for sticking with us during this presentation. And here's a couple QR codes for you all to check out. But more importantly, stop by the booth to come see this in real time. We will be able to have someone from Hypori that's there with us to be able to showcase how it works and its importance in real time for everyone to actually touch and see. So, okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks, guys.